My name is Eliza Morgan, and before you jump to conclusions, no, I'm not someone who normally attracts drama. In fact, I've spent most of my life carefully avoiding it. But lately, something strange has been happening to me, something I never thought possible. Something that started so subtly that I barely noticed. Until now I've always been fiercely independent. At 26, living alone in a cozy but somewhat isolated cottage at the edge of town seemed like the dream. Privacy, peace, solitude, everything I'd ever wished for. But sometimes dreams have a way of turning into something else entirely. It all began about 2 weeks ago. The rain had been relentless that day, battering my old wooden roof, filling my ears with its comforting rhythm. Lost in my thoughts, I'd almost missed the soft knock on my front door. I wasn't expecting visitors. Truthfully, I rarely did. Curious, I stood up from my worn, floral-patterned armchair, my tea now forgotten, growing colder by the second. A second knock, gentler, almost hesitant. "Hello?" I called, pulling the door open slowly, cautious yet intrigued. What met my eyes was nothing like what I'd imagined. No neighbor needing sugar, no lost mail carrier. Instead, a pair of soulful brown eyes stared up at me from behind drenched fur, a dog, standing there shivering, utterly soaked by the rain. There was no collar, no tag, nothing that could identify where he belonged. Just a large, shaggy creature whose eyes held a question I couldn't quite decipher. His coat was thick, black mixed with strands of brown, matted and muddy, but there was something gentle and dignified about him that tugged at my heart instantly. "Where did you come from?" I whispered softly, kneeling down, my hand extended slowly at the dog. Didn't move, just stared, his eyes fixed on mine with a quiet intensity. The rain had not ceased. If anything, it was pouring harder, splashing loudly around us, soaking my slippers. Yet he stood, rooted to his spot. "You're going to catch your death out here," I sighed, standing up. "Well, come in then, if you'd like." To my surprise, the dog didn't budge. I moved away from the door, leaving it ajar, returning to the kitchen to grab a towel. When I turned around, he was finally inside, sitting quietly on the entry rug. As though he were waiting for permission to move further. It was oddly touching how polite he was, despite being a stray. I approached slowly, crouching to wipe away the rain, careful not to frighten him. He remained still, his breathing steady, watching me with a mixture of trust and caution. Something about his gaze pierced through me, as though he saw more of me than I saw of him. "You must have a home," I murmured softly, running the towel gently over his head, behind his ears. "Someone must be missing you." But as days passed and no one came looking, he remained at my side, quietly becoming part of my home. He never made noise, never barked or whined, just silently accompanied me as I moved through my daily routines. Slowly, he became my shadow. However, I couldn't shake the feeling that there was something more to this dog than mere coincidence. At times, when I glanced over my shoulder, I'd find him watching me closely, his eyes thoughtful, as if studying me, waiting for something. Then came the moment that changed everything. A routine evening turned extraordinary by something seemingly trivial. I'd stepped into my bathroom, leaving the dog, whom I'd begun calling Shadow, curled up comfortably near the fireplace. But when I opened the bathroom door afterward, I almost stumbled over him. He was right outside the door, sitting straight up, eyes fixed intently on the spot where I had stood moments ago. "What on earth are you doing?" I asked gently, amused at first. Shadow didn't move, didn't wag his tail as usual, didn't even blink. His stance was alert, rigid, ears slightly perked as though listening for something beyond my hearing. That was the first time it happened. And since then, every single time I went into the bathroom, Shadow would wait, patiently and quietly, right outside the door. Each time his behavior became slightly more intense, more focused. As though the mere act of me stepping inside triggered something in him, a protective instinct, a silent vigil. The strangeness of it began to gnaw at me, leaving questions lingering in my mind. Why this room? Why now? It wasn't like him to act so oddly. Shadow was calm, unassuming. This new habit was unsettling, almost like a warning. But a warning of what? Sleep became difficult, my thoughts crowded with scenarios, none of them particularly comforting. I found myself hyper-aware of Shadow's movements, his quiet presence more noticeable than ever. It was as if he was trying to communicate something important, something he couldn't express in words. One night, curiosity got the better of me. Stepping into the bathroom, I paused, leaving the door cracked just enough to observe him. Shadow's behavior changed instantly. He stood perfectly still, ears tilted forward, head slightly cocked, staring at the bathroom door as if anticipating something about to happen. Minutes passed, and he remained unwavering, a guardian at the threshold. My heart pounded inexplicably. What did he sense? Was there something about this bathroom, something unseen, something wrong, that I hadn't realized? A chill ran down my spine as my imagination began to spiral. When I finally stepped out again, Shadow instantly relaxed, his tail wagging lightly, nudging my hand gently as if reassuring himself that I was safe. His behavior puzzled me deeply. I began to second-guess my choice to live so isolated. Was I truly alone here? Shadow seemed to know something I didn't. Was my quiet little house not as safe as I'd thought? These unsettling thoughts kept multiplying, fueled by Shadow's quiet vigilance. But despite my apprehension, I found myself relying on him, trusting his silent judgment. Maybe it was silly, just a dog's odd habit, but part of me felt there was more beneath the surface. That night, lying awake in bed, Shadow stretched out on the floor beside me. I whispered softly into the darkness, "What are you trying to tell me, Shadow?" In response, he lifted his head, eyes locking onto mine through the darkness, gentle yet firm, as if silently promising to keep watch over me, and I realized, unsettling or not, I was no longer alone. Shadow had come for a reason, even if I didn't yet understand why. For now, his presence was enough to comfort the gnawing uncertainty inside me, but the quiet question lingered, echoing in my mind, haunting my dreams. Why did he always wait outside the bathroom, and what did he know that I didn't? The more I tried to ignore it, the harder it became. Shadow's peculiar habit was no longer merely strange, it was growing unsettling, insistent even. My little cottage, once comforting in its silence, now felt tense, every corner cloaked in unseen tension, yet nothing concrete had happened. There were no strange noises, no threatening figures in the shadows, nothing out of place. It was just me, Shadow, and the baffling mystery of the bathroom door. Still, something stirred deep within me, an instinctive unease that Shadow had awoken. Days stretched into weeks, and despite my quiet worry, life returned to a semblance of normalcy. But Shadow's vigil continued relentlessly, a quiet constant in the background. He had become my protector without reason, a sentinel whose intentions I could only guess at. One morning, as golden sunlight filtered gently through my bedroom curtains, I opened my eyes to find Shadow sitting upright beside my bed, his expression solemn yet somehow reassuring. "Good morning," I murmured, reaching out to stroke his thick fur. His tail thumped gently on the wooden floor, but his eyes, those patient, deep eyes, still seemed to hold secrets he couldn't share. My morning routine had changed subtly since Shadow's arrival. No longer could I simply wander sleepily into the bathroom without a prickling awareness of being observed, guarded. Today, as I stepped toward the bathroom, Shadow immediately rose, moving deliberately ahead of me, placing himself directly before the door as if blocking my path. "The Shadow?" I asked softly, confusion mixing with curiosity. "What is it?" He didn't budge. His ears were tilted forward slightly, muscles taut, eyes unwavering. I gently nudged him aside. "It's okay," I reassured him quietly, though my own voice felt uncertain. Shadow stepped back hesitantly, granting me access but clearly unhappy about it. I slipped inside, quickly shutting the door behind me, heart pounding inexplicably in my chest. I waited a moment, breath held, ear pressed close against the cool wood of the door. Silence greeted me. Slowly, I turned toward the mirror, attempting to shake off the peculiar sense of anxiety building beneath my skin. The reflection staring back at me felt strained, weary eyes framed by the dark curls of my unbrushed hair. "Get it together, Eliza," I whispered to my reflection. "It's just a dog." But was it? As I reached for my toothbrush, something caught my eye in the mirror's reflection, movement. I whipped around, pulse accelerating, but saw only the soft morning light filling the room. The window was slightly ajar, curtains fluttering softly. Maybe that was it. Still, unease lingered. My hands trembled slightly as I finished washing my face, forcing a sense of calm back into my body. But as soon as I opened the door, their shadow stood, exactly as I'd left him, patiently waiting. His presence felt heavier than usual, a strange intensity radiating from him that made my throat tighten. "What is it you sense here?" I asked him, kneeling down to stare deeply into his eyes, searching for answers that remained stubbornly out of reach. Shadow only tilted his head slightly, gently placing his paw atop my knee as though offering quiet reassurance. The rest of the day passed in relative peace, but my thoughts continued to circle back to Shadow's peculiar fixation. My imagination twisted small details into shadows of threats. Each creak of the house, every rustle of the wind felt ominous. I began to question my choice of isolation again, something I'd previously relished. Later that evening, as rain began tapping softly against the windows, I settled down in the living room, a book in hand, hoping for distraction. Shadow lay quietly at my feet, seemingly content yet alert. The house was calm, peaceful, but that peace felt fragile, like glass on the verge of shattering. Suddenly, Shadow's head jerked up sharply, ears alert, eyes trained toward the hallway. A low, quiet growl vibrated softly from deep within his throat, startling me from my reading. "What is it?" I whispered, my heart leaping into my throat. Shadow rose quickly, moving silently yet deliberately toward the bathroom once again, stopping directly in front of the door. This time, his stance was different, defensive, ears flat against his head, eyes locked on the closed door as though he could see straight through it. My body froze, muscles tensed, a cold chill seeping down my spine. "Shadow." My voice was barely audible. He didn't acknowledge me, his body rigid with tension, growl now louder, a clear warning resonating in the quiet house. My fingers trembled as I slowly approached, standing just behind him, gaze fixed on the innocent-looking bathroom door. Minutes felt like eternity as we stood there, the only sound Shadow's persistent warning. Finally, courage sparked within me. Taking a deep breath, I stepped forward, reaching for the bathroom door. Shadow's growl intensified instantly, desperate, almost pleading, but I had to know. The knob turned smoothly beneath my hand. The door creaked open slowly, revealing the bathroom bathed in shadowy silence. Nothing stirred. No intruders, no threats. Just my own reflection staring back at me from the mirror, eyes wide and frightened. Shadow nudged my leg sharply, almost angrily, pushing himself between me and the open door, firmly guiding me away. "What are you protecting me from?" My voice trembled with frustration and fear, tears threatening to spill from my eyes. "What am I not seeing?" Shadow's response was to press his head gently against my thigh, eyes locked pleadingly onto mine. The message was clear: trust me. Exhausted and confused, I allowed him to lead me away from the door, retreating back to the warmth of the living room. He settled at my feet, still vigilant but visibly calmer, as though satisfied he had removed me from some invisible danger. That night, sleep eluded me once more. Questions looped endlessly through my thoughts. Could Shadow sense something supernatural? Or was there a more mundane yet equally terrifying explanation? Desperation drove me to seek answers. The next morning, armed with determination, I scoured every inch of the bathroom, inspecting tiles, plumbing, walls, everything. Still nothing. No leaks, no mold, no hidden passageways, just an ordinary bathroom. Yet Shadow never relented. If anything, his behavior intensified. Each time I approached the bathroom, he'd silently position himself protectively. The rest of the house seemed safe, yet this single room somehow symbolized an unseen threat, something only he understood. Then came the night when things finally escalated beyond explanation. I awoke suddenly from restless sleep, feeling inexplicably anxious. Shadow was gone from my bedside. Heart racing, I slipped from beneath the covers, feet touching the cold wooden floor as I made my way silently down the hallway. There he stood, facing the bathroom door, his body trembling slightly, hackles raised. Moonlight spilled through the hallway window, illuminating his dark coat. His posture was terrifyingly tense, as if bracing for battle. "What is it now?" I whispered shakily, reaching toward him. But before my fingers brushed his fur, a soft noise caught my attention, a faint, muffled sound, barely audible, yet unmistakably present. A subtle scraping, perhaps beneath the floor or behind the wall. It sent chills through my veins. Shadows. Growl rose urgently, clearly reacting to the same faint sound I had heard. You hear it too, I gasped, fear gripping me tightly. You've known this whole time. Something was behind that wall, hidden, waiting, patiently biding its time. The realization was paralyzing. Shadow took a step closer, pressing against me protectively, silently vowing to keep me safe. I clung desperately to him, heart hammering painfully. What had I missed? What danger lurked inside my seemingly peaceful home? As I stood frozen, gripping Shadow's fur, I knew I could no longer ignore this threat. Tomorrow, I'd uncover whatever lurked behind those walls. Tonight, however, fear had immobilized me. In Shadow's quiet but unyielding presence, I found the strength to hold on until dawn, praying whatever waited in hiding wouldn't reveal itself before I was ready to face it. Sleep was impossible. I spent the rest of that night curled on the sofa, wrapped in a heavy blanket, my eyes fixated nervously on the dark hallway that led to the bathroom. Shadow stayed faithfully by my side, lying awake, ears twitching occasionally, clearly listening for sounds beyond my perception. Every rustle of wind, every creak in the floorboards made my pulse quicken, but the house remained frustratingly quiet, offering no answers. Dawn broke gently, spreading a pale, reassuring glow through the cottage. As the first rays of sun filtered through the curtains, I rubbed my tired eyes and sat up. Shadow instantly raised his head, sensing my restlessness. His deep eyes, full of empathy yet still mysterious, watched me intently. We can't keep going like this, Shadow, I whispered softly, placing a trembling hand on his thick fur. We need to know what's happening. He nuzzled gently against me, offering silent reassurance. Something deep within me was comforted by his presence. Yet, beneath that comfort was a gnawing fear of whatever lay hidden behind those walls, whatever Shadow could sense, and I couldn't. Determined not to spend another night terrified by unknown threats, I resolved to call someone for help. Though part of me hesitated, embarrassed by the thought of explaining my fears about strange noises and a protective dog guarding my bathroom door, desperation pushed pride aside. I picked up my phone, fingers shaking slightly, and dialed. Within seconds, the comforting voice of my best friend Sarah echoed in my ear. Eliza? Is everything okay? It's barely 7. I'm sorry, I mumbled, trying to steady my voice. I need your help. Can you come over? Sarah paused, sensing the urgency in my tone. Of course. I'll be there in 20 minutes. Relief washed through me. At least now I wouldn't have to face this alone. When Sarah arrived, Shadow greeted her calmly, wagging his tail slowly but never straying far from me. She eyed him curiously, amused by his quiet dignity. Who's this handsome guy? She asked. Warmly, crouching to pet him. Shadow, I replied quietly. He just showed up one day. Lucky you, Sarah said lightly. But as she took a closer look at my face, her expression shifted to concern. You look exhausted. What's going on? I know it sounds crazy, I began slowly, but something strange is happening. Shadow's been acting weird about the bathroom, always standing guard, growling. Last night, I heard noises behind the wall. I think something's hiding back there. Sarah's eyes widened slightly, but she nodded supportively. Have you checked? Only briefly. I didn't find anything, but Shadow won't leave it alone. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Let's take another look, she offered calmly. 2 pairs of eyes are better than 1. Together. We approached the bathroom cautiously, Shadow immediately positioning himself protectively between us and the door. His muscles were tense, his eyes unyielding. Shadow, please, I pleaded gently. We have to see what's there. Reluctantly, he allowed us to pass, but remained just inches away, vigilant. We began examining the room carefully. Sarah tapped the tiles, pressing gently along the walls, checking the cabinets thoroughly. Still, we found nothing unusual. Frustration gnawed at me, anxiety building with every empty discovery. Eliza, maybe it was just your imagination, Sarah suggested. Softly, seeing my growing distress, it wasn't, I insisted firmly. Shadow hears it too. I trust him. She nodded thoughtfully, eyes scanning the room again. Wait, did you check underneath the sink? I hesitated. Only briefly. Sarah knelt and carefully opened the cabinet doors beneath the sink. It seemed ordinary at first glance, cleaning supplies neatly stacked, pipes running smoothly. But then she paused, frowning deeply. Eliza, come here, she whispered urgently, and my heart leapt as I crouched beside her. What is it? She pointed. Silently. At first, I saw nothing unusual, but then, following her finger, my breath caught sharply. At the very back of the cabinet, almost hidden, was a tiny gap in the wood panel. Barely noticeable, yet undeniably there is that. I began nervously. A hole, Sarah confirmed softly. Looks like it leads behind the wall. Shadow growled softly behind us, as though confirming we'd found the source of his concern. Sarah carefully reached forward, fingers brushing against the wood. With gentle pressure, the panel shifted slightly, just enough to suggest it could be moved. I think this panel comes off, she whispered, glancing nervously at me. I swallowed hard, uncertainty swirling in my stomach. Let's see what's behind it. Carefully, we tugged at the panel. It resisted at first, then suddenly popped free. Shadow tensed beside me, stepping forward protectively. Behind the panel was darkness, an empty space large enough to fit a person, stretching unseen behind the bathroom wall. Cold air rushed out, carrying a faint scent of dampness. My pulse quickened painfully. What on earth? Sarah breathed quietly, shining the flashlight from her phone into the darkness. The beam illuminated old, dusty pipes, cobwebs, and something else. A faint, glinting metallic object lying just within reach. What's that? I whispered shakily. Sarah hesitated before reaching inside, pulling the object carefully toward us. It was an old, rusted key, heavy, antique-looking, as though it belonged to something important, forgotten long ago. A key? Sarah murmured, bewildered as she handed it to me. Shadow nudged closer, sniffing curiously. I held the key tightly, my hand trembling slightly. It felt cold, weighty with secrets, but why here? I whispered, puzzled. What does this open? Sarah shook her head slowly. I don't know. But maybe Shadow does. Shadow's eyes met mine, silently urging me to understand. Could it be that all along he'd sensed this hidden space, the mystery waiting silently within my home? But why the urgency? Was there more still hidden, something we hadn't yet uncovered? As I clutched the key, a deeper instinct tugged insistently at my consciousness. My gaze returned to the dark opening, heart racing at the realization that this was no random hiding spot. This was deliberate, carefully concealed. What else is back there? I asked softly, dread crawling beneath my skin. Only one way to find out, Sarah murmured. We need more light. Together we found brighter flashlights, returning to the opening with newfound determination. Shadow stood close, alert yet strangely calm, as though acknowledging we'd finally understood his warnings. I slowly peered deeper inside, flashlight beam slicing through dust-filled air. Beyond the pipes lay another object, a faded leather-bound journal, lying forgotten amidst dirt and debris. My breath caught sharply. There's something else, I whispered, reaching carefully inside, retrieving the journal with shaking hands. It was old, its leather cracked with age. The pages, fragile and yellowed, emitted a faint scent of decay. Sarah and I exchanged an anxious glance before carefully opening the journal. Shadow pressed reassuringly against my leg as I slowly turned the brittle pages, revealing faded handwriting. The words were faint, almost ghostly, but legible enough. I've hidden it here, hoping it stays forgotten. If someone finds this, please, leave immediately. This place is not safe. He's always watching. Waiting. Don't trust the quiet. Don't trust the shadows. My heart thundered violently, a chill gripping my bones. Sarah gripped my arm tightly. Her eyes wide with alarm. Eliza, what does this mean? She breathed, voice trembling. Shadow growled softly, as though responding to the words we'd read aloud. His gaze held quiet urgency. It means someone new, I whispered fearfully. Someone else felt what we felt. Shadow sensed it all along. My mind raced uncontrollably, thoughts tangling. Who was he? Was this person still here, hiding, waiting? Were we in immediate danger? We can't stay here, Sarah said urgently, tugging my sleeve. We need to go, now. Shadow, however, didn't move toward the door. Instead, he moved closer, pressing firmly against my side, looking deeply into my eyes, as if begging me not to run, but to confront whatever danger lay waiting. I took a trembling breath, forcing calm back into my voice. No. We can't run away yet. We need answers. Sarah stared at me in shock, but I knew Shadow was right. Whatever secrets my house held, whatever dangers, it was my responsibility to uncover them. Running now meant living forever in fear. Never understanding why this place felt so threatening, holding Shadow's gaze steadily, I gently stroked his fur, feeling strength pass silently from him into me. With my best friend beside me, and this remarkable dog by my side, I resolved to face whatever lay hidden in the shadows of my home, that we would find out who had hidden these secrets, and what terrible truth waited patiently behind the walls. Damn why. Fingers tightened around the leather-bound journal, its weight heavy with secrets, anxiety twisting sharply in my chest. Shadow's body pressed reassuringly against my leg, steady yet tense, his low growl lingering just beneath the silence. Sarah stood frozen beside me, eyes wide with apprehension, her flashlight trembling slightly in her hand. We have to read the rest, I whispered, barely audible, my voice wavering. There might be more clues. Sarah nodded slowly, her breath hitching nervously as I carefully turned the brittle pages. Each sheet felt fragile beneath my touch, like ancient paper ready to crumble into dust. I swallowed hard, scanning the faded handwriting once more. He comes at night, always at night. I feel his eyes, watching, waiting behind these walls. I've tried to warn others, but nobody believes me. They say I'm imagining things. But I know he's real. I see him in shadows, hear him whisper my name. I've hidden the key to his room. May no one ever open it again. Sarah's grip tightened on my arm. Eliza, what does it mean, his room? My throat felt painfully dry. There must be another hidden place somewhere in the house. The key we found, it must open it. Shadow stepped forward, pressing closer, his eyes unwavering. His silent insistence strengthened my resolve. Where could it be? Sarah murmured, her voice hushed, as though fearing the walls themselves could overhear us. Damn white gaze drifted around the small, shadow-filled bathroom, searching desperately for anything unusual. A panel, a hidden door, something we'd overlooked. My pulse quickened as I recalled the hallway closet directly opposite the bathroom. I'd rarely opened it, using it only for storage, never thinking twice about it. Maybe there, I whispered, motioning toward the closet door, partially obscured by shadows. Sarah followed my gaze warily, exchanging a tense glance with me. Shadow moved ahead immediately, positioning himself protectively before the closet, a low growl rising deep within his chest. Shadow senses it, I breathed anxiously. There's definitely something behind that door. We stepped cautiously into the hallway, every movement feeling agonizingly slow. The silence around us felt oppressive, suffocating almost. Each creak of the wooden floor sent chills crawling along my spine. My fingers trembled as I reached slowly for the closet's brass doorknob, cold beneath my fingertips. Shadow's growl intensified, fur raised, teeth slightly bared. Sarah's breathing quickened beside me, her flashlight flickering slightly as though sensing our dread. Be ready, I murmured shakily. With a burst of courage, I twisted the knob and pulled the door open swiftly. Nothing. The closet appeared utterly ordinary, stacks of towels, old blankets, a few cleaning supplies. My heart sank, frustration mingling with relief. But Shadow didn't relax. Instead, he stepped forward, nudging at the towels insistently with his nose. Wait, Sarah murmured, leaning forward cautiously. He sees something we don't. Trusting Shadow completely, I knelt and began removing items carefully, setting them aside one by one until my fingers brushed against something odd, a metal handle embedded in the floor beneath an old blanket. My breath caught sharply. Here. I gasped softly, revealing a trapdoor hidden beneath layers of fabric. The handle was worn and dusty, obviously untouched for years. Shadow pressed his nose firmly against the trapdoor, growling softly again, urging caution. Maybe we shouldn't, Sarah whispered hesitantly, fear clear in her eyes. We have to, I replied firmly, though dread filled my chest. This is what he's been warning me about. Whatever's hidden down there, it's time we face it. Slowly, I pulled the key from my pocket, my fingers trembling. The antique metal slid smoothly into the rusted lock, turning with a reluctant groan. That echoed unsettlingly through the silent house. Shadow's growl deepened, tension radiating through every muscle. Sarah held her breath beside me as the latch clicked softly. With careful hesitation, I lifted the trapdoor open, revealing a narrow staircase descending into pure darkness. An eerie, stale smell drifted upward, causing my stomach to churn uneasily. Cold air caressed my skin, whispers of ancient secrets rising from the shadows below. Flashlights ready, I whispered nervously. Sarah nodded, gripping her flashlight tightly. Shadow pushed himself forward, gently nudging my leg as if reminding me I wasn't alone. Together, we began our cautious descent. Each step creaked loudly beneath our weight, echoing through the space around us. The staircase seemed endless, plunging deeper into the earth beneath my home. My heart hammered painfully against my ribs, anxiety mounting with every step downward. The darkness pressed against us, heavy and oppressive, challenging our resolve. Finally, our feet touched solid ground, a small, narrow corridor, dimly lit only by our shaking flashlights. The walls were stone, ancient and damp, lined with dust-covered shelves holding rusted tools, faded photographs, and strange, forgotten objects. The air felt colder here, thick with secrets. What is this place? Sarah whispered shakily, her voice trembling. It feels hidden, I murmured softly. Someone wanted this place forgotten. Shadow moved silently ahead, eyes scanning the shadows warily, muscles tense yet steady. His presence was comforting yet eerie. It was clear he'd been expecting this moment, perhaps even preparing for it. The corridor twisted slightly, ending abruptly in a heavy wooden door. It looked incredibly old, darkened with age, iron hinges rusted heavily. Carved deeply into the wood, barely legible, was a single chilling word, remember. My heart thundered violently, dread twisting sharply inside my chest. Sarah's voice trembled beside me. Remember what? I don't know, I whispered. But someone wanted us to find this. Shadow stood rigidly before the door, growling softly yet firmly, his entire body vibrating with protective intensity. His eyes locked onto mine, silently begging caution yet urging courage. Taking a deep, shuddering breath, I reached slowly for the ancient iron handle. My fingers trembled violently, the metal cold and unyielding beneath my touch. I hesitated only briefly before pushing forward, the heavy door slowly creaking open with an unsettling groan. Cold air rushed outward, thick with musty decay, as darkness yawned before us, a room untouched for decades, filled with shadows and unspoken stories. Sarah's flashlight beam trembled, illuminating the space cautiously. Inside was a small room, nearly empty except for a single, dust-covered desk standing alone in the center. On it lay scattered, faded papers, another journal, and, most disturbingly, a framed photograph of my own cottage. Oh my God, Sarah whispered, her voice filled with fear. Who was watching your house? My entire body trembled violently, fear gripping me tighter. Shadow growled again, stepping forward protectively with shaking fingers. I picked up the journal, its pages yellowed with age yet eerily similar to the first. My heart raced uncontrollably as I flipped carefully through the pages, stopping at the most heavily inked entry. If you've found this room, it means you know too much. Leave now before it's too late. He is always close. He's been watching. All along. A loud, sudden noise echoed from above, the unmistakable sound of footsteps moving deliberately through my home. Directly overhead, that Shadow's head snapped upward sharply, ears flat, growl low and menacing. Sarah's eyes widened in pure terror as we realized the terrible truth. We were not alone anymore. He was already here, watching, waiting, and now he knew we'd found him. The sound of footsteps above froze us in place, hearts hammering in terror and adrenaline. Sarah's eyes met mine, wide and glistening. Shadow pressed himself protectively in front of us, his growl now a guttural warning that echoed in the cramped, underground room. For a moment, time seemed suspended, the three of us caught in the charged air between danger and revelation, then the footsteps paused directly above the trapdoor. I saw the dust drift down from the boards. Whoever, or whatever, was up there knew exactly where we were. Sarah grabbed my arm, whispering, "Eliza, we have to get out, now." But Shadow didn't budge. Instead, he stood rooted at the open doorway of the secret room, body rigid, gaze locked up the narrow stairwell. For the first time since he'd arrived, his fearlessness seemed almost desperate, as if he knew this moment would come. His entire being was focused on protecting us from the threat closing in. "We can't just run," I whispered, torn between panic and the strange, compelling pull to finally uncover the truth. "There's something we're supposed to understand. Something about this room, about the house, about Shadow himself." A creak from above. The trapdoor handle rattled, then a thud, heavy, determined. Someone was trying to open it. The key still hung from my pocket. I reached for it with trembling fingers, but it was cold comfort now. No locks would protect us if he truly wanted in. Sarah moved behind me, clutching my shoulder, but my mind spun, racing through everything we'd discovered, the hidden journals, the warnings, the photo of my house taken from outside, as if someone had been watching me, waiting for me to find all this. My eyes darted over the dust-shrouded room, searching for a weapon, a clue, anything. Shadow growled again, for bristling, then he did something he hadn't done before, he barked. Not loud, but sharp, commanding, as if summoning me to attention. I knelt beside him, adrenaline and trust warring in my veins. "What do you want me to do, Shadow?" He pressed his head to my knee and then, without warning, nosed aside a pile of papers on the old desk. Beneath them, glinting dully in the weak flashlight beam, was a narrow, battered box, a safe, its dial old and rusty. Sarah's breath caught. "There's something in there." "The last secret?" I nodded. "We have to try. We came this far." My hands shook as I spun the dial. It turned with surprising ease, almost as if it had been waiting for me. I heard, somewhere above, a voice as male, angry, muffled by the layers of floor and earth. "Hello?" It called, not quite shouting. My blood chilled. I didn't recognize it. The safe clicked open. Inside was a bundle of yellowed letters, and, most startlingly, a collar, worn brown leather with a faded metal tag. I held it up to the light. The tag read, "Shadow, Guardian. If found, trust him. He sees what you can't." My throat tightened as the pieces fell together. The journals, the warnings, the dog who appeared in my life just as the secrets began to unravel. Shadow hadn't simply found me, he'd been sent to me, perhaps by someone who'd lived here before, someone who'd known about the danger and needed to ensure it would be faced, not fled. I shoved the collar in my pocket and scanned the letters. The top envelope was addressed, "To whoever loves this place enough to stay." I tore it open, scanning the words quickly, heart pounding. "If you are reading this, the house has chosen you, and so has its guardian." I couldn't face the darkness alone. The man who comes at night is not a ghost, nor a demon, but a man twisted by loneliness and obsession. He comes for the house, for whoever lives here. I could not stop him. But the dog, he knows. Trust him, as I did. Do not let fear win. Shine light in the dark. Confront him. Only then can you stay, truly free. A thud above, the trapdoor shuddered violently. Shadow tensed, eyes burning with conviction, not fear. I felt, suddenly, a strange sense of calm. Maybe it was madness. Maybe it was the certainty that running now would mean never sleeping soundly again. "Sarah, help me," I whispered. "We're going up. Together. We end this." She hesitated, but nodded, strength flooding her face. "With you." We started up the narrow stairs, Shadow pressed tight to my side. As we neared the top, the trapdoor burst open with a crash, flooding the stairwell with sudden, blinding daylight. A dark figure loomed above us, silhouetted in the light. He wore battered jeans, a heavy coat, his face shadowed by a hood. But his eyes glinted, mad, desperate, fixated on me. I knew, with a cold certainty, this was the watcher from the journals, the man who'd haunted this house for decades. That he shouted, voice hoarse, "You shouldn't have come here. It's mine, a mine." He lurched forward, but Shadow launched himself up the last step, planting himself between us and the man, barking fiercely. The sound was raw, primal, echoing through the cottage. The man hesitated, startled, and then something strange happened. The air seemed to shift, years of fear, secrets, and hidden pain seemed to dissolve in the morning light pouring through the broken trapdoor. The man's rage faltered, confusion clouding his eyes. I held up the collar and the letter. "I know what you've done. I know what you want. But it ends now. This house is not yours. You can't hide here anymore. It's over." For a moment, the man stood silent, trembling. Shadow stood tall, a living barrier, unwavering and unafraid. The man's shoulders slumped. He looked, in that moment, less like a monster and more like a lost soul, beaten by time and his own choices. I just wanted it back," he rasped, tears glinting in his eyes. "I was here first. She left me behind. The dog, always stopped me." I felt an ache of pity, twisted with fear. But I shook my head. "You can't live in the shadows, hurting people who come after you. You need help. And I'm not leaving." Sarah stepped beside me, voice steady. "We're calling the police." He let out a long, defeated breath, then bolted for the door. But Shadow was faster. He leapt, barking, driving the man back until he tripped, falling heavily to the floor. I grabbed my phone, dialing 911 with shaking hands. My voice was calm as I explained, "There's an intruder. Please, hurry." Minutes felt like years. The man didn't move. Shadow stood over him, gaze steady, never aggressive, only resolute. When the police finally arrived, they found me, Sarah, and Shadow standing guard over a broken man who no longer had the strength to haunt us. They took him away, asking questions I could barely answer, searching the secret rooms and listening to our story with disbelief. But when they found the journals and the collar, something shifted. They saw, finally, the pattern, a man obsessed, hiding in the walls and shadows, scaring away anyone who tried to call this place home. The day faded and calm slowly returned. Sarah hugged me tightly, tears spilling down her cheeks. "You did it, Eliza. You faced it. You're safe." I looked down at Shadow, who sat at my feet, watching me with proud, loving eyes. That night, I sat on the porch, the air cool and still. Shadow rested beside me, his head in my lap, his job finally done. I thought of all the people who had come before me, all the secrets this old house had held tight. I thought of the guardian who had come to find me when I needed him most. "Thank you, Shadow," I whispered into his soft fur, tears slipping silently down my cheeks. "You saved me. You saved this place." He nuzzled closer, and for the first time since he arrived, I heard a soft, contented sigh from deep in his chest, the sound of a guardian who knew his duty was finally complete, and as the stars blinked awake in the velvet sky, I understood, sometimes the bravest thing you can do is stop running from the darkness and trust the light, especially when you have a friend waiting outside the bathroom door, watching over you until you're ready to open it, step out, and truly live.